Oh, we already have it set up because Kate never switched it.
So I'm not one of these my meeting.
Thing is, we don't always know who these people are. Hey, Kate, how do we know who how do we know who the organizers are? Do we know?
We don't.
Okay.
We can put it in
We
the
got
chat.
3 of them open.
Okay, which ones do I need to do?
We did number 1, 2, 3. And then-
Hi.
Okay.
Number 4.
The review workshop forum, I think.
Yeah, just right down there, ballroom on the left. Ballroom, yep, yes, right past the poster board. You're welcome.
Good morning. Do we have any of our workshop organizers or student volunteers with us?
For reveal are literally in there waiting to be told that it's open.
Hello, I'm a student volunteer.
You're a student volunteer, Fernando?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
I'm gonna make you a co-host.
Okay.
And Eva, are you one of our workshop organizers?
No.
No. Okay. So, Fernando, I'm actually gonna make you a host so that you can just help them the whole time.
Okay.
Let me change you to host. And then when the workshop organizers get here, just go ahead and make them a co-host
Mhm.
and then they're good to go.
Okay.
We had the Zoom set up that it's gonna record, and then we can decide later if we don't use the recording or we do, but it's easier to have it and not use it than not record and then be upset we don't have it later.
Perfect.
And you have that option too. So if the workshop organizers decide they don't want to, just go ahead on the very bottom of your where you can mute and turn your video off, just turn off the video recording if that's what it gets decided.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
Good.
and then I'm on the Slack channel if you need anything.
Good. Thanks.
Have a great day.
You are Kate, right?
I am Reagan. Kate's
Oh,
over on the
Reagan.
other side of me.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye-bye.
because I didn't know. Bye-bye. Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Fernando. This is Reagan again.
Hi, Regan.
Can you let Alan Sade be the co-host?
Good. Make co-host. Done.
Perfect. Let's just make sure he did that. I think he did. But you can see everyone that's here.
Yeah. Yeah, she's.
So let's see
Yeah,
what else is here. We have
Can you make it co-host? as
Eva.
well?
Yeah.
I think he probably has to do it, right?
Fernando, can you also make Ava a co-host as well?
Sure. Make
Perfect.
co-host. Good.
Anybody else that's on here? We have Gustavo. Is that
No.
okay,
It's just,
then you're good to
uh,
go. And I think we are still on, so just so you know, if you want to mute yourself.
Yep.
But Christina.
Good morning, everyone in Seattle, and good day, good night, good afternoon, good whatever to everyone online. Right, welcome to the Perspectives on the Evaluation of Recommender Systems workshop. This is the second time we're having it. I'm Alan, this is Christina, and we've got our third organizer, Eva, with us online. Eva will do a short introduction of what we're going to do today. Eva, please go ahead.
Hi and welcome everybody from well, almost evening Austria. Welcome everybody, both in Seattle and online. I'm going to shortly walk you through the goals of the workshop, what we did, the papers that we got, and most importantly, the program, and then the keynote, which will be our first highlight in this workshop. So generally, the workshop had, let's say, two calls open, one being a call for, let's say, standard traditional papers, and the other one being a call for abstract submissions, which do not necessarily have to be included in the proceedings, but were more thought of making some topics more popular, and we will see that two of those abstracts that have been accepted will pitch their ideas later on this morning to kind of introduce the topic and discuss the topic. So generally we have received 12 full paper submissions, out of which we selected 6 or accepted 6. So a 50% acceptance rate. Out of the 3 abstract submissions, we accepted 2. As I said, you will see those 2 abstracts presented shortly a bit later. We had 19 PC members, and all of the papers received 3 reviews. This is like the, well, let's say, the core numbers on the workshop. And what we will see today is a loaded program for so generally the virtual part will be the morning session. So within the next 3.5 hours, we will have a on-site and virtual hybrid workshop. And for the people on site, they will continue, you will continue later on in the afternoon as well, with some open round table discussions. This is something that we did already last year, and it has been, as far as we can tell, a success story. That's why we continue this. And in the morning session, once I'm done with this introduction stuff, Kim Falk will hold a keynote on the evaluation of recommender systems. And then, as I said, we will have 2 pitches for the 2 abstract submissions. They will both pitch their topics, what aspects of recommendation should be tested and evaluated, and challenges, approaches, and evaluation metrics. And they will pitch their ideas, and this will be subject to discussions after the break. We will do breakout rooms, both on site and virtually in Zoom. And then after a wrap up, the virtual part will be over, and the people in Seattle will go for lunch, basically. What is the core goal of this workshop? So the workshop intentionally is designed to not be a mini conference. We want people to talk. We want people to discuss, to move the topic of evaluation forward, to get a common understanding, to get an understanding of what others do and what others experience when it comes to evaluating recommender systems. So please discuss, please talk to each other, please use those hours to discuss. We do provide you with a living document. For the breakout sessions, we ask all the groups to briefly summarize what they discussed and what maybe their findings were, or points where they, for example, couldn't agree, to have some log of what we did and what we discussed, maybe also for next year's discussions and input. We do have a Slack channel slash hash perspectives WS. You can sign up here in this link. If you want to do a, let's say, use a back channel for communication, please do so. With that, I think this is, let's say, the most organizational issues have been covered up until now. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Kim Falk to you. Kim will hold the keynote on evaluation and what basically the goals of the evaluation should be, and where evaluation should be going. And for those of you who don't know Kim is the author of the Practical Recommender Systems book. Actually, I'm using it for teaching too. He works at Spotify. He also did an industry talk at this year's RecSys on their recommender systems. Yeah, as I said, it's my great pleasure to say, Kim, the floor is yours.
We're improvising with the technology, but we'll.
Okay, good.
Improvising? You're improvising.
Yes. My computer also no, but we'll figure it out. It's probably better this way than 10 last one can make changes I did while you were completely okay. Yeah. And then Kim. Thank you. How far do I need to? Is this okay? Close. Okay. Close. Okay. Thank you for coming here. So what I want to talk about today is that so this is an evaluation workshop, and of course we should talk about evaluation. And so when I was invited to give this keynote, I was a bit in trouble because I'm sure that whatever clever things I can say about evaluation, somebody already said. So I actually tried to look at it from a different angle, and let's see if that's going to work. How do I change the slides? Okay, yeah, I think it works. Okay, so thank you for the nice presentation. As mentioned, I work for Shopify, not Spotify, but it seems to be a common mistake by now, where I'm a staff recommender engineer. I work with product recommendations on e-commerce websites. So while in my book, I'm very focused on Netflix, lately I'm more looking into e-commerce recommendations. I've been working as a data scientist forever. I think by now I've been working with machine learning the last 10 years. And I'm specialized in recommender systems. I wrote the book, not that book, I wrote that book. Those are their books. And then I've been co-chair for 2019 and 20, done a lot of other stuff. So when you afterwards, you evaluate this keynote, keep in mind that I'm trying to ask questions. I'm not saying that evaluation as we do it is wrong. I'm just trying to
to have some other things that you can also think about when we talk about evaluation. And that's why it's maybe wrong to say the proper use of evaluation, but let's talk about it. That's where I will start. Then I will ask the question, how do we actually understand if a recommender system works or not? And then talk a bit about causality of events. So where do we actually evaluate? Because evaluation is one thing, but it's actually a lot of different things depending on where you are in the world. So I want to just spend 2 minutes talking about how you do in business, or at least how I believe we should do in business and how you do it in academia. And then, so there's kind of, so one of the things that is missing now is that I'm not going to talk about online testing or A/B testing or multi-arm bandits and so on, because I feel that this is more on the offline evaluation. And so when you train a model and you try and figure out whether it should work or not, then you do offline evaluation. And then when it actually is in production, you also do online, offline evaluation to keep monitoring the model. And then, but while often people talk about the current state of the art when they talk about metrics and evaluation of an article, basically what we want to know when we do evaluation of a model is just, should we put it in production or not? And that's actually the most important question. So whether, in the sense that you could even go as far as saying, as long as it beats random, as long as it beats popular products, then we're actually happy to see if it works, because the correlation between your offline metrics and your online metrics are often so confused that it's difficult. So you use it just to decide whether it should go into the queue of stuff that you want to do A/B testing on. Another thing that you have to wonder, or you have to worry about or consider, is that when you say that this model has a good evaluation, the metrics looks good, then there's always somebody who's not happy about it. So what do you actually do with those customers or users that will not get the recommendations that they want? Because you can say that, as it depending on the metrics, of course, then there will always be a group that will be more happy, and then there will sadly be a group that is less happy. Is that something that is acceptable for this model before you put it into production? Because as at least at Shopify, for us, we have more than 1 million merchants, and we can't just put a model into production and then consider what happened without considering what happens if it breaks for half of them. And then I also think it's very important to say that you can actually compare the metrics, the evaluation, because even if you just talk about different merchants, then one merchant's garbage could be, or one merchant's recommender garbage could be another merchant's recommender goal. So you can actually just say this model works great based on this article, because it depends a lot on what kind of domain you are in and what kind of signals that you're working with. To move on to the, I don't know if there is a better word for it. Maybe it's just monitoring of models in production. But anyway, so when it's online, you should still do the offline evaluation. But in this case, it's not so much, again, to benchmark it. Of course, it's to benchmark it against how it was yesterday and the day before and so on, because there are such things as model drift, which means that your optimized hyperparameters might not be optimized any longer after a certain time. That's one of the things that makes machine learning go astray at a certain point. Of course, there is also the data drift that you need to keep an eye on. Then we're not talking so much about evaluation of models, but then you need to keep an eye on your distributions of the data that comes in. And then I just said it wasn't important about benchmarking, but still, of course, you need to ensure that the model doesn't go bad. That's the business side of things before you decide on whether you should put it into A/B testing and so on. On academia, when you get a new paper, it's I think it's very interesting that they come and say, we beat current state of the art. And then you go through a whole day at RecSys, and then you discover that everybody beat current state of the art. And then, so yesterday I took a picture of one of the presentations. That's the picture all the way to the right. And then while I took that picture, I also searched on the internet. And if you look at the last FM MRR at 20, then the picture to the left is a paper from a paper that is some years ago. And the picture to the right is from a paper that was presented here at the conference. And so I've discussed this with a lot of people on the second row the last couple of days. And then the answer is always, but maybe the data filtering, some other things were different. So maybe it's okay, it looks like this. But the thing is that if we want to use these metrics as a baseline and say that it's current state of the art, then it's a number. And it's very easy to say if 0.1 is larger than 0.2 or no. So the question is, if we should use a baseline like this, then we need to be much more precise. And so the value of these evaluations is still, it's a gateway to get into the conferences. And I can see that on Twitter, I wasn't the only one that was thinking a little bit about that. But so if I should come with an idea of what I think we should maybe do differently, is that instead of SOSTA, could we then say that it just needs to work, and then talk about what is it that it needs to work? That will enable us to, I think, get a much more fair picture of how the models that are presented at conferences would actually, how they work and how they perform, because then you don't have these, I don't want to say anything about people cheating, but sometimes you have a filtering of the data that goes into the system before the metrics are printed. So you're sure that everything is going fine. So my suggestion would be, if you, for example, take a data set as last FM that has been used a lot, if we could, the people who published it, if they could also publish it with a framework saying that when you have a model that you want to evaluate with this data set, then use, I don't know, sklearn interface type for your recommender system, and then you just upload it and push a button, and then there will be a leaderboard or something like that, or an official scoreboard. Again, let's keep in mind that I think it's problematic that we keep saying that we have to be better than state of art, because it doesn't really make sense because of different domains and different types of data and so on and so on. But still, then we could say, as long as you reach above some kind of baseline that is better than random, then you should have a candidate article to submit at a conference. And then if you want to do, is this that if you look at a physics example or a physics, when you do research in biology or something like that, then you have a data sheet, very long, that explains exactly what data you used, what time of day, if you had coffee, and all those kind of things. And maybe those kind of things should also be something that is included when you talk about reproducibility of articles, because it's fine with the code, but if you can't recreate the same environment, then it's still easier than have to code it yourself, but it's still problematic that you can actually recreate the same environment. So, okay, I thought there was another slide here. Anyway, so I know that this is probably not something that we can change from one day to another, but I think that is something that should really be considered, because it's, so I think that we had a lot of interesting articles and presentations the last couple of days, but actually I think that we wasted 3 minutes on basically every presentation on people convincing us that they beat current state of the art somehow, but without us actually understanding whether it was something they did to get it submitted or whether they're actually better than everybody else. Okay, so that was my views on proper use of evaluation. So if you should then forget about evaluation and metrics and so on, then how can we actually measure if a recommender system works or not? I'm still not sure after all these years. We have Netflix, Javier who was at Netflix once wrote the following in a paper, and he says that actually we should not think of a recommender problem as something where we predict ratings. I know nobody really predicts ratings any longer because we don't believe in them, but then we predict whether it should be consumed or not. And there are a lot of other aspects that you should also put into considerations, which is something that is there is a lot of discussion about it, and it's very important. Oh God, am I going backwards now? No. Okay, then there was another paper that somebody made me notice that says that the success of a recommender system is really about how much people trust in it. And for me, that resonates a lot because basically, I think of the fruit dealer in Rome that I also talk about in my book, that he is the perfect recommender for me because he knew what I wanted. He knew when I should have stuff and when I shouldn't have stuff. So I like the idea of having relationships. So how do we actually, am I out of time? How's time? Okay. Okay, good. And so a relationship is something that requires repeated interactions. And actually, what we really want to do with a recommender system, the relationship between a customer or the consumer and the producer, that could be great if it was a long relationship. And then I'm sorry about my artistic work here, but basically, one of the things that you should consider is that, so a lot of the metrics that we have right now is that we need to make people buy as much as possible right now. But so if what is then more important, is it then if you have on the left side one visit where there was a lot of money spent, or another visit that was little money spent, and then you can say, okay, but if the customer returns and spends a little bit every time, then at end, actually we earn more on the customer. So this, you can see that it leans that way. And that kind of leads into something that we talk a lot about, is that we want to maximize customer lifetime value. So basically, of course, we want them to buy a lot also right now, but it's actually more important that they continue buying over time. There are some papers that says that we should be careful being too optimistic, saying that people will always return and so on. So some would say that we have to maximize as much as possible right now, but let's say that we want to be optimistic. And then if we do that, then right now when we look at the data sets that we have, you say, okay, so we have one basket, two baskets, and then we split that data into training data, saying that some is input and then the last item is output. But if we are actually trying to optimize for returning users, how about we then don't look at predicting the next item that will go into the shopping basket or the next movie and so on, and just say, can we optimize the session such that we are sure that people will return? Because then suddenly you kind of elevate the problem to how can we make this into the best experience for the user right now, so much that they want to return, rather than we sold them a lot of stuff that they probably didn't need. And if we did that, then we could say that we could maybe find, so this is me imagining all the different types of baskets or the different types of best sessions you could have with a user. Then maybe we could find some baskets or sessions that were good, and maybe those ones were clustered in some kind of latent space. Of course, there will also be bad user return patterns, in the sense where if the user experiences this, then they will never go back. And maybe I wanted to give a note here also. And an argument to go towards this one would also be, so people don't like clickbait really a lot. Everybody talks about it. So if we could actually optimize the experience so that they don't look at clickbait, because actually I don't think that if I end up in clickbait, I usually go away from the clickbait side, but I also are careful not to get into the site where there was clickbait in the first place. And so maybe by optimizing for returning users, we will also kind of solve the problem of looking into what is clickbait and not. And then when we have an actual user session, then we could look at the current session and then say, what do we need to happen in that session so we can move it in the direction of a good return state. When I talk about state, it's not that I'm talking about machine learning. Sorry, that's machine learning, but as reinforcement learning as such, I also think that it's something that you can do a lot on without having reinforcement learning. Okay, those colors look better on my monitor. Anyway, so again, if we consider this to be a latent space where there are kind of clusters of good return states and bad return states, then you could also look at it as distribution, for example, an LDA model or something like that. And then you could use these distributions as a way of sampling what the recommendations should be. Instead of trying to, again, predict product IDs, you could say that my solution should just sample outside of inside this space or this place, and then we could maybe do recommendations like that instead. Yeah. And as an evaluation, I know that this is probably not going to happen, but I think at least it could be a very interesting way of going ahead and looking at recommender systems. Yeah, and this is one of those slides I just added 2 minutes before I had to go up here. So anyway, so the point that I didn't want to forget to make was also that we should remember that when we, again, when I talk about the sampling before and try to do recommendations instead of just the product IDs, I think that that's also something we can translate into to when we do the metrics and the evaluation of models, saying that instead of we have the precision, either it was a recommendation or no, we could say, is it within the vicinity of the item we wanted to predict? Of course, then there are the problems that, again, if you are a browser and you're looking for a t-shirt, then the recommendations are good when they're similar. While if you have an iPhone and you're looking for the right charger, then it has to be the right charger. So the distance or the similarity should also have a threshold based on the model or the domain that you're looking in. And this is, yeah, and sorry, and this is what I just said more or less. And also if we then do the sampling and when we do the metrics that are not completely the same, but there is an area that is good, then maybe we could also enable more diversity and flexibility into our systems. That was the second part. The third part is that I want to talk a little bit about causality. Because when we talk about recommender systems, we don't often talk about, we talk about whether people clicked or they consumed, but we don't really talk about what happened if they didn't click on it. And so in some work I did at a Swedish furniture company, we thought about how do we do marketing in a good way. And there is this matrix that you can look at where you can divide people how they will react to some marketing. And I'll just go through them and then maybe talk a little bit about how I think we could also consider that with recommender systems. So you can say that if you look will people convert if treated, and convert in this case is that they will click on an email or they will react to whatever you send it. And maybe that converted, no, anyway. So the persuadables are the ones that if they didn't receive your marketing, then they would not have done whatever it is you wanted. While since you sent them something, then they will do whatever you are, in a sense that there it was like, if you come to our store, then we will give you a free hot dog if you buy a sofa or something like that. The problem is then, if you talk about the converted ones instead, is the ones that, so we are offering a hot dog or maybe even 10% discount. It depended a little bit on what was at stake. So the hot dog was maybe not the most costly thing. But so we don't want to actually send out marketing or discount to people that are already going to buy the sofa, because then we're losing money. In the sense, of course, they'll be happy with the 10% discount, but they were going anyway. So why should we then take it away? Then there are the indifferent ones, which they're not going to do anything. They don't care. They get lots of those emails anyway. So they just don't interact with it. And then there are the sleeping dogs. And the sleeping dogs are actually something that you should be really careful about, because sleeping dogs are the people that they might go out and buy the sofa, but because that you sent the marketing material, they will say, I don't like this. They are ruining my privacy, so I'll go and buy it at the competition instead. I think that's fair in the sense that I think that I experienced that too. But so again, sorry for the colors. But so basically, what we want to do is when we recommend stuff, we want the persuadables, because in a sense, we have only a little real estate to show recommendations. So why send out recommendations for people who would already buy it? Of course, there is brand identity and so on. So there are still reasons to do it, but you really don't want them to see if yeah, okay. So you really don't want to have the sleeping dogs react to it. And then if you look at it this way, then popular products in most cases will fall into the converted ones, because we don't actually need to send, of course you can say that they're popular because we keep spamming them on people's faces, but actually we don't really need those recommendations. The less popular ones, on the other hand, there is a chance that we can persuade them, but also you should be careful, because here, if it's so bad that they will say that they will never come back, then you have the sleeping dog problem again. So basically, what you can say is that popular products are safe recommendations, because the risk that people, how to say, go in and leave and never come back again is pretty small. But also you don't really get any information about it, because what people get out of a popular product, since everybody likes it, you don't get any information back for them. While if you can recommend products that are, how to say, fewer people like, then back to this embedding space where you can say that there is a taste profile and there is things to understand about the users, then the long tail products are actually much better recommendations. So if we go back to the metrics where we talk about we want to optimize our evaluation, then the problem with the way that metrics are done is that it's often the best choice is actually to give the most popular products, because there you have the highest chance of predicting something that is true. But if you look at it as I want to learn more about the users, then actually, I'd say, if we talk about the good return sessions before we want to learn about users and their profiles, then we don't want to give popular products, because that doesn't give us any information. I think that's an important point. And with that, I'm actually finished with my presentation. I did it just in time.
Thank you, Kim.
really interesting talk. Are there any questions from the audience here? Or are there any questions on Zoom? No? Okay, anyone here?
Hi, Zach, I work at OkCupid. Whenever we look at like model drift stuff, a lot of what comes up for us is kind of a question, I guess, is what do you do like when there is a drift? Like if you ever continually retraining a model, like what do you
Sorry,
actually
what do I do when there is
a drift, you know, when you actually start to see a degradation in performance? Sometimes there's an obvious case, sometimes there's a bug, sometimes that's something to look into, but then sometimes if it's like a gradual thing that's starting to decay over time, like what do you actually do? And that's kind of been a thing for us with model performance monitoring, and why we don't always prioritize it, because we have other systems to catch bugs and stuff like that in the data. So I'm just curious what you think you like, really what maybe at Shopify is done, or like how that's prioritized for model drift, like monitoring and stuff like that.
Okay. So I'll tell you what I think and leave out what we do at Shopify to start with. So since model drift can be as an effect of so many different things, the only thing that you can really do is just do lots of monitoring and be sure that you understand when it happens and why. I don't know. I think that the biggest problem is often that you have business people, product owners. I'm sorry, now we're going to the business discussion, that say, we have a KPI right now, we need to push a model. And that's something that you can write in a newsletter and everybody is happy. If you then come back 2 months later and say, oh, by the way, the announcement we did has drifted and we need to redo the model or we need to retrain the model, that's not something that fits into your impact review, the KPIs and so on. And so I think that the biggest problem is, and again, also when you look at articles today, is that you think that you finish with a model. You don't finish with a model. You have to nurture it daily. I don't know if that answers your question. No, I don't. I know, but yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Kim.
Hi.
So I wonder how you would go about detecting sleeping dogs, because the whole idea then is that they don't return, right? Like with a newsletter where you do typical uplift modeling, they unsubscribe or something, but in the case of recommendations on a website, there's no signal at all, I guess. Yes, okay.
It's very difficult. And one of the advantages of doing a keynote is that I don't have to answer that question in a sense.
That's great.
Of course, you can look at randomization and do user studies, but it's something that is really hard to understand whether they are sleeping dogs or they just really don't care about what you're showing them. I think what was important by the causality discussion is that we need to realize that it's just, so the focus right now is that we need to have one recommendation that people will click or consume. And then we don't think about what else we're showing them. But it could actually be that even if you predict a good recommendation, the rest of them makes the user or the consumer so irritated that they actually don't want to see the other one. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So speaking about the irritated customers in your diagram, I like that because we think about that a lot now. We try to create an implicit negative preference model, which obviously has some high risk, but usually high reward benefits. And I was wondering if you've experimented with that and what kind of metrics you've used to evaluate such a condition, because if you have users who are like in the sleeping dog category, for example, if I continue to give them items that they find irritating, they could just leave. And to me, that's a negative preference that you're trying to find for a user rather than a positive preference. Because, or I should say, the user is more sensitive to the negative preference than they are to the positive preference models. And so negative preference models seems difficult to me, and wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
It's it's hard because your feedback loop is only the positive seconds. And if you are in a subscription environment where you actually know more about your users and they leave, then maybe you can start learning about that. I don't have a good answer to your question. I'm sorry.
Hey Kim, thank you for your talk. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a good idea to evaluate for return visits on a website, right? I think that's what you mentioned about maximizing customer value.
Yes.
So beyond filtering for items customers will return, what are your thoughts on how we will evaluate this in an offline approach, right? Do we look at it across multiple sessions? How far in the future do we need to look at this to actually be able to measure this?
So I don't know. So I think that it's very interesting just to look at one session at the time and say, okay, so when you say in the future, the question is just, did they return or not? And then you can, of course, start saying that whether they return or not, there is some kind of profile on top of that that will tell you, how do you say, more about what you should put in that session. So I don't know if it depends on the data, I would say, but the thing that I was thinking about was just looking at session wise, session input, did they return or not? And then of course it could be interesting to look at more history and so on, but then again it starts becoming very complicated. Yeah.
Thanks, Kim. We have a question online. Considering your point about the current approach to beat state of the art to prove the improvement, do you think that a more simple, interpretable, or explainable model which ties in performance with state of the art is a good enough paper to be accepted?
There is a long list of very skilled reviewers at every conference that will have to take that decision. I think that's the best way I can answer that.
So as a follow-up, I mean, with the things you said, if what advice would you give to both industry and academia writing papers here, like to trying to, I mean, on one side, get into the conference, but on the other side, also like get impact with their work?
Yes. Okay. So the problem is that I stated was that I believe that it's wrong that you have to prove that you beat state of the art, because you don't, and we, in a sense that either we need to do like a Kaggle competition where everybody has to upload their solutions and we understand whether they beat it or not. But the problem that I see with that is that then there is a very good book called Mass Destruction of Math, where she talks about how we will always end up optimizing for the metrics that we are measuring. And I think that it's really a shame that there is such a pool of very intelligent people doing research on recommender systems. And so do great work, and then somehow you have to fit it into that little evaluation box, and then you have to lie and squeeze so it actually beats those metrics. Otherwise, you can't get into the conference. So what I would suggest is that the conference would say, you just have to prove that you're better than, in the sense that it runs, and then explain your idea that should be novel and good. So in conclusion of what I'm trying to say is that the metrics are misguiding right now, and I would like us to move away from that. We can't do that, so Yeah,
Thanks. I follow up then. I mean, there's this sort of discussion has been going on for ages, right? There's a paper from 2011 maybe, called Improvements That Don't Add Up. Looking at how the information retrieval community did, benchmarking, and, over the course of 10 years, they showed that improvements were at best marginal because people were only using like the same baselines they had been using for 10 years.
yeah.
It's the same thing, the slides you showed, it's difficult to compare. But then, and I mean, obviously this is a question you won't be able to answer, but like, how would we figure out which papers to deem good enough to present? How would we figure out, what's actually a valid improvement?
But then can I ask you the question, how do you do it now?
We're not doing it correctly, at least. I mean, that's something we're all aware of, right?
But so everybody agrees that a paper has to be improving on state of the art, and everybody agrees that right now the metrics that are delivered are not trustable. So it's useless in a sense. It's just background noise, and then it's up to the reviewers to decide. In a sense that everybody could just paste that table in and say, this is our improvements.
Yeah.
Then how to say, you can even auto generate and say be plus 0.1 every time, and then every year you reset it, because that's also what it seems like, in the sense that you do improvements and then the next year we forget that improvements there was. I mean, anyway, so I believe it's not trustable, so we should disregard it or fix it.
Yeah.
And fixing it would, from my point of view, would be deliver code, describe how you tested the data, and say that it works. There is a baseline that we beat, and then focus on the actual improvement, on why it helps, why does it work? Because also, now you got me started. Also, the problem is that we overfit to these data sets, and there is no consideration whatsoever on what actually happened when this data was collected. In a sense, last FM, when the person that was listening to that music, were they trying to fall asleep? Not Shopify, but Spotify talks a lot about how you can evaluate, in the sense that they figure out when it is that you go to sleep, because then it doesn't really matter if it's music you like. Okay, well, maybe I'm saying things that I shouldn't hear, but anyway, so, and also with the review data, it's Amazon review data. Most of the negative review data is because the postman was half an hour late. And okay, so I can predict whether it's a good review or not, but what do I actually learn? So if we can move away from the metrics and then say you actually have to describe why this is an improvement, then I would see that as the way forward. I understand that there needs to be a gateway.
You're preaching to the choir. I remember at RecSys 2013, there was a workshop on evaluation, and someone expressed more or less the same things you've done now, and that was 9 years ago. And I'm assuming we'll be having this discussion again, in 5, 10, 15 years as well, because as a community, we tend to sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everybody now, hopefully everybody will clap and say, we agree. And then tomorrow we'll go back to, thank you. And then tomorrow we'll go back to reviewing the same way as we always did, using the metrics, because
at least we're not doing RMSE on rating prediction.
That's true. That took how many years?
Let's not discuss that.
Sorry, I have an opinion on this. So there are there are conferences like in the broader field of machine learning who now explicitly put it in their guidelines that if a reviewer rejects a paper on the basis that it doesn't beat the state of the art, then the meta reviewer is allowed to just disregard the review. So I think we also have a responsibility there. I don't know, actually. The last time I read the reviewer guidelines for RecSys was 2 years ago. Maybe it's in there already. Anyone? No, okay. But maybe we should put it in there if it's not in there already. I think that our responsibility as the community to give reviewers clear guidelines of how to review papers. Okay, that was my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a very good point.
Any more questions? All right, Kim, thanks a lot.
And thank you very much for listening. It's a pleasure to be allowed to talk to so many people. There's only one of you that fell asleep. I'll find you after.
Okay, so the best keynote award goes to our keynote. But as you know, for people that participated last year already, we will give out a best paper award, but it's not on us, the workshop organizers, to decide who will get the best paper award, because it's a community thing. So we have here the link and also the QR code, which hopefully leads to the right URL, where you can vote for the best paper. So all papers are listed in here. Please only vote once. We strongly rely on your integrity, and we are all researchers and scientists. So we're just talking about evaluation, so do the right thing. There's time restriction, so please vote until like 11 in our local time. So you have 1 hour to vote to decide. That will give us the possibility to look up who's the winner, to announce it after the break. So that's why there's this time restriction. I'll wait a little bit until everybody could access this, but we'll also put it, hopefully Eva will put it on Slack as well. Does it work? Like, some people look very confused in the room. Yeah, it works out. Okay, great. But still, while you're voting, we hope that you can still pay attention to all what's happening. So the next program point, Eva will go to the next slide. Will you? Yes, it's time for the topic pitches. So we have 5 minutes per pitch and during Q&A. So it's without slides, so you will only see this marvelous slide. And I'm happy to invite the speaker for the first topic on what aspects of recommendation should be tested and evaluated. Who will be the one? Yes. So
Before we start, are authors of the second topic here? Okay, so I think we only have one topic pitch today.
anyways, the floor is yours. Oh, I will have stopwatch, yeah?
Oh. Yeah. All right, so in addition to the great keynote by Kim this morning, there's another thing that we want you to think about when you're evaluating your algorithms, and that is just testing the logic behind them, testing the data that you test them on. Because so I'm a software engineer by background. I also worked in a production environment for a long time. And there everything is tested, because if you don't test it, then you end up with very catastrophic results sometimes. Like this one time, I woke up on a Sunday and realized that we hadn't been serving any recommendations on a website all weekend because there was a little post-processing rule that was being applied to the recommendation algorithm, and it excluded every item we were able to recommend. So I learned the hard way that it's really important, and I try to test algorithms as well in my research, but it's not easy. It is something that requires a lot more thought. It's not as easy as just unit testing software. I think everyone knows how to do that, but how do you unit test an algorithm? What do you unit test? So I'm guessing most of you have seen our teasers. We give you some ideas of tests that we have applied in the past. And we'd like to discuss with you if you think that is useful or not at all. It's okay to have strong opinions. And what other tests you think we might need, because we're planning to release an evaluation tool or like a testing toolkit in addition to RecPack which we already open source to help you evaluate your algorithms. Okay, guys, what do you want to add to that? Go.
Who has seen the teaser video? Okay, so that's about half of the audience. So maybe it is interesting to actually go into some details of what tests we suggest and what tests that we have already been using in the past when developing RecPack. One of the things, like Lean mentioned, the first basis of every software should be unit tests. And we should also just write unit tests when we are writing our algorithm code. If we write code, we're usually doing mathematical operations, especially, I mean, if we're writing simple algebraic algorithms like item cannon, we can just test every single operation that goes into that algorithm to make sure that our actual final prediction does make sense and is what we actually wrote in mathematical formulae in our actual papers. Another thing that we've been using for testing is to do some overfitting tests. If we're working with sequential recommendation, we expect that if our data set very clearly contains a pattern A, B, A, B, A, B, I'm always watching B after A, then every sequential algorithm should be able to figure that out. If my algorithm that I designed did not, then either I wrote a bug in my code, which is very much possible. That happened like 15 out of 20 times that this has occurred to me when this test failed. Or the algorithm just has a logical flaw that it can't actually detect this repeating behavior. This can be okay if you're like, okay, my algorithm shouldn't like actually do repeating behavior. I expect it to just recommend something completely new and nothing that the user already saw. Then that's fine. And you at least know that this test didn't break something unexpectedly. But if you're like, oh shit, my algorithm just failed and I didn't know it would have failed on this case, then that's actually a very useful test. And then the final test that we have, or that I can now come up with on the spot, is the like sort of translation tests. If you're doing embedding algorithms or something like that, then you actually expect that items that are similar also are similar in the embedding space. And you can test this by creating like toy data sets where you artificially put articles close together, you give them to same users, and you can actually write tests to check that these are actually closely together in the test embedding space as well. So these are some ideas.
It's if nothing else, you can come up and speak, because then you can take off your mask. So one thing that's so overall from what we just mentioned is that you should always remember that when you have been working on a recommender model for months, there is a slight bias for you that you always want it to work. So remember, go and ask the person you know that likes you the least in your team, and then make them do tests for you. That's just a side note. The part that I'm supposed to talk about is that you should have automatic tests that verifies that your data makes sense. Because one of the large problems is that, so when you train a model, it's very important that the distributions are actually the same in the training data and what you are going to validate it against. In business case, it's also important that the production data mirrors what you have in place there. Another thing that is very important to notice is that sometimes the data that you expect to be there is not there, or it's outside of the range of the numbers that you expect. So we can talk about dates, we can talk about, I don't know, ratings. We can also talk about the fact that sometimes the types of events, somebody just came up with this new JavaScript thingy, so your event suddenly is written in Swedish, and then somebody will be happy, but possibly not your recommender system is supposed to train on it. And as the two other people said here, that's what I remember we were supposed to talk about from the slides.
I think as a closing remark, the one thing I would like to add is that all of the tests that Robin has mentioned, indeed, most of the time is that we wrote a bug in our code, and it's useful to know that. But in each of the each of the test cases he mentioned, we know at least one algorithm that we tested because it got very good state-of-the-art performance in the paper. Actually, one of those logical flaws. It's claimed to learn certain similarities, and then it turned out that the embedding space did not make sense at all. or it claimed to be the best ever sequential algorithm, and it wasn't able to memorize the AB pattern, or even ABCD, ABCD, ABC, tell me what's next. So you might not be thinking about this, and it may seem like it will automatically translate into poor performance, but it really doesn't. So it's important to look at it. That concludes our presentation. Are we within the time limit, Christina? Thank you.
Alright, so please stay there. Are there any questions? Like,
Hey, are we talking about algorithm or model tests or both?
So far we were talking about algorithm tests and data tests, not about model tests yet.
All right. I would say we should also look at model tests.
Absolutely, yes. That was an easy question. More easy questions, please.
Hi, thank you for this. I'm a fan of testing as well. And as a practitioner, my question to you is, sometimes when we write tests, unit tests, and they may extend to integration tests or end-to-end smoke testing. And sometimes these tests can be fairly brittle, right? You change something right at the start endpoint, and at the end, something breaks. I was wondering, could you share any advice on how you try to balance this testing with development and deployment velocity?
Yeah, so that is one of the reasons we didn't talk about model testing in this abstract, also because we have limited time. I feel like algorithm tests and data tests are pretty stable, right? If they work, then at least you know that your algorithm was correctly implemented and the logic is sound, and that the data you're testing it on is sensible. Model testing, as you say, is much more complicated because indeed you have integration tests and regression tests that I'm going to be running. My own strategy for that is usually that I include them, and if they fail, I will just look at it more closely and try to understand, okay, is this a failure because of a bug or whatever, or is it just me who needs to update the tests? That is my approach. Kim, or?
You answer the questions.
Okay, they agree with me. This is great.
I'm going to be a bit difficult. You're all computer scientists, right? And you're all practitioners, right? In practice, when you're working at a startup, etc., unit tests, regression tests, sure. If you're one PhD student working in a lab, trying to get your paper published, you might not have the capacity to, build a super infrastructure for tests. What do we do then?
Yeah, so that is the follow-up paper where we're trying to release the toolkit that is supposed to help PhD researchers and everyone else who doesn't have the time or capacity or the background knowledge to write these tests, to just use them out of the box. So that's why we rely on you to tell us what kind of tests you would like to see in there so we can help you.
One kind of test I try to look at is for models that are supposed to personalize the signal. Do users with different viewing behavior actually get different results? Obviously, the embedding test sometimes can answer that, right? If it applies. But when it doesn't, I feel like I'm always picking arbitrary choices. Like, oh, I guess it needs to be this different before I flag it. How are you approaching those rules in your framework, and if you have any good best practices for that?
That's actually a really good question. Standard answer, I know. That is one of the very basic tests that can actually break a lot of algorithms. I mean, popularity for a start, but that's logical. But there are a lot of algorithms that actually just simulate popularity in a lot of cases. Only they'll call it actual personalization. We generally also just take a minimum difference in recommendations. Like if you are your user history is somewhat different, we expect at least 50% different recommendations, but I agree this is relatively arbitrary. So there definitely needs to be more thought into how can we actually what's different enough if our input is different.
Sorry, you're probably tired of listening to me by now, but I think the thing that we are proposing is kind of functionally that it should work, while we then, as soon as we start talking about how the algorithm or the models behave, then you have to interpret the data much more. So in a sense that I think the things that we have mentioned so far is something that we can create a framework or maybe even have a cable competition-ish way so students can just upload it and then it can be green or no. While what you're talking about is what actually makes recommender systems really cool and thereby hard.
I'm gonna go to the next question now.
Sure.
There's a question
We'll talk later.
online from one of our SVs. What kind of approach do you take when testing data? Do you manually define the data inside the test suite, or do you have a library that does that automatically?
Everything is manual because the thing is that, again, it's something that you need to understand the data set before you can define the rules. In the sense that, again, if you use last FM for your algorithms, then if you do feature engineering, then at each step you can do some more or less automated test. But as soon as you start working with data, it's a matter of interpretation, what is correct or not. I would say, in the sense that I don't know, at Shopify, we have these artifacts, which is a way that the schema of the data that we use. And so it's a good idea always to verify that your assumptions are actually there. So again, is the data distributed across time? Is it every day? Or is it a lot of data from the 15th of July and then a big hole and then a day in August? Because then if you're trying to do sequence-based recommendations, then there is something in between that should also be there. Did I answer the question?
Thank you. And now we're going to do topic 2.
Hi, everyone. The paper submitted is named Multi-Domain User Recommender System at Globo, Challenge Approaches and Metrics. Actually, Globo is a media company in Brazil, the second biggest in the world, and you have more or less 100 million unique users per month. And the challenge you have with multi-stakeholders, because every product inside the Globo is a different subject to different stakeholder, and then every product is related to a different topic. For example, we have one for sports, another for entertainment, another for news, and every stakeholder is subjected to different metrics as well. Because, for example, in news, you usually have less videos with shorter duration, so you have just one ad printing for every video, for example. Another for entertainment, we have videos with duration longer, so we have more than one advertising shown. So in this case, we are interested in check, for example, user engagement for the entertainment, because we want to check how many times the amount of minutes the user watching that video, and not just a click. So for that, we have a common platform. There, every recommendation is an experiment. So every experiment is an A/B testing. And in this A/B testing, we set a different metric for every A/B testing, because we have also different recommendation types. If it's a homepage with no information about an item, it's a user-based recommendation. So we just have user data for setting this experiment. And on the other hand, if you have an item that the user like click on news or even in a video, we have the content of this video or the news to be related to the recommendation. So in this case, it would be like an item based that we have content to have the similarities. So this A/B testing, we compare against the editorial content, because we have curated editorial content, or sometimes you have just the more recent news or more recent videos that you can compare as well if you don't have editorial curation. So the challenges we have are mostly in adapting this context, this A/B testing platform for every type of stakeholder and metric, and the discussions with the products as well, according to the metrics, because sometimes we are more interested in just clicks or engagement. And We have different challenges according to the stakeholder. Yeah, I think I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions?
I just really like taking my mask off. No, actually.
I just forgot it. I hope you could hear me.
No, I want to get your opinion on something actually. So in RecPack, what we do right now to address that same challenge you were talking about of having different use cases for your recommendations, like on a home page, you want to capture people's initial interest. On a article page, you may just want them to continue reading. So all of these are different use cases that would actually require different evaluation, in my opinion. So our approach to that right now is what we call the scenario, which is using different terrain validation test data splits to better simulate each use case. Like on a homepage, we might optimize for unseen users, because those are very important on a homepage that you capture their interests as well. But then on an article page, we might do something with like a last item timed prediction type of scenario. So how do you feel about that? Do you do something similar or?
Yeah, actually, we did something quite similar, because we separate actually according to segments of users depending on their engagement. So we have a lot of like light users with just one visit every 2 days, and other users that like really have users that are every day. So we kind of separate these users to check, make analysis according to the profile. And sometimes we also deliver different models according to the user engagement. So maybe for like light users are just focusing on the like breaking news or more top content. And for more engaged users, we try and make a more complex model with like session based, for example. So we basically are more driven to the user engagement in like making this differently according to the scenario of the user.
Okay, Alan, stop me if I'm talking too much. Can I ask a follow-up question? So you say you segment users then? Can you share like what kind of segments do you have? You mentioned light users. Are there many more?
Yeah, mostly the segmentations are in their engagement. So we check the number of sessions per day of the user, or the time the user taking the session as well. So there are some heavy users that spend like 1 hour in the session. Some users just like went in the session and spend like less than a minute. So we have like actually for every product there is a different segments. So for entertainment, for example, the users spend much more time than news. Sometimes the user just don't read the news, just click like the heading topic and go out of the session. So we kind of have the segmentation profiles for every kind of topic.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna try to tie your abstract to what the first topic was. How much testing do you guys do of the sort of non-recommender systems types of metrics? So like your infrastructure, how well engineered is it, so to say?
Yeah, actually, it's a challenge in terms of engineering, because we have like a common API, and this API is we print recommendations and also signals to check the A/B testing. So in order to configure a new A/B testing, we have to set a metric. We are more than one metric actually. So in order to check that, we have to align with the stakeholder, the scenario of the recommendation, and the metric. Basically, we check the CTRs, the first one, the most straightforward. But in videos, for example, we can either check the duration of the video, the amount of minutes the user watched from a video, or the number of videos per session as well. It's another metric that we check. And for news, we usually combine the amount of time the user spent on reading the same news, and also the amount of scroll in the news as well, because sometimes the user may just left the tab open and is not really there reading the news. So we have to combine both.
Any more questions?
In terms of like offline evaluation as well here, do you find that you have to adapt the offline evaluation a lot to match the A/B testing results? Is that something that is like a smooth process, or like how often do you go through a lot of different iterations on that?
Yeah, actually, it's challenging because we have like really like fresh news. We have to recommend news from the same day because they're not like interesting if you're like recommending from the day before. So we usually check like basic metrics in the for the model to check if it's like the training is fitting, and also checking if new test data. But we do some offline tests, but are usually more concerned in the online testing. And for that, we with the AB platform, we set like 1% of the users. We have if you have like a new version of the model, we just like put in production with a little amount of users to check if it's okay, and then we little by little roll out for more users. But usually we be more like driven to the online.
Sorry, I have a question more online testing. Generally, like we would have like offensive metrics, defensive metrics, and like informational metrics. Do you so offensive being like you're trying to move this one metric, defensive is like a guardrail, like you don't want to move this thing, or you don't want to see it decrease. And then informational is just like you're thinking about it. Is that something that you do as well? Similarly, like do you have I guess more focus on the defensive side, like things that you are watching simultaneously to make sure they don't decrease and that sort of thing in your A/B testing?
Actually, we don't check much like the defensive metrics, but we usually check if it's users are like simultaneously in the same news, but have like more offline checking afterwards with data analysis.
Hi. Soon we'll have like a special event coming up, the World Cup football. Do you anticipate this changing your A/B tests? Or for example, when the Queen died, did you stop A/B tests? Did your A/B test results change entirely between different algorithms that you used?
Actually, it's a challenging because it's the first time we didn't have the recommendation system at that time, like with this platform. So we are probably in the World Cup, we will maintain the A/B tests the same way. Actually, we're going to change the metrics and we have to have internal discussions. But it's challenging as well because in the next week we have elections in Brazil, so it will be completely changing the amount of users and scenarios as well to be like tough in terms of competition and other aspects in the country. But during the day of the elections, we have to turn off the recommender system because usually there are some attacks to the company. So there are like robots trying to engage one candidate or another, and then maybe like legal problems if you have like engaging more one candidate than another. So we decided to stop the recommendation system in that specific day.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, was about the elections, and how does it work in Brazil? Like, to my understanding, because I'm also Brazilian, to my understanding is there's a law, right, that you cannot show one candidate more than the other. Is that only for the day of the election? Is that a few weeks before the election? And do you manually make sure that there's an equal representation? How do you do this?
Yeah, actually, there is a law, but it's kind of, you cannot like favor a lot one candidate. It can be like kind of impartial. But there will be, in the day of the elections, we're going to turn off. And before, you have like data analysis to check if you're like which are the top most seen content, if it's more for one candidate or another. So we kind of check that before. And until now, we didn't have any outlier or something that will be really challenging. But we are like the editorial people, the editorial team are concerned in the type of news as well, in order to not like the news talking about favoring a candidate, just like the news to be impartial, but in any case to be like problematic in terms of law if you just have news from one candidate, if it's good or not. But we try to balance that. So, but during I think the attacks are more concerned because they can like engage one candidate more than another, or engage up like a bad news for one candidate. But we have decoration of the editorial, so it's kind of secure for the law.
But then in your personalized recommendations, is there a risk that if someone only reads about Bolsonaro, then that person will only get Bolsonaro stuff?
Yeah, mostly he'll get that, but we have like on the top of the page of the news, the mandatory they are curated. So the first two news are curated by the editorial people. So if you, for example, enter in the portal, there is what's going on in the country. So these news are like curated for editorial people to have like a big context, and then the personalized content after that. So we have like a secure content before the recommendation.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, if there's anyone.
Hi, so I understand that you do recommendations of multiple media kinds like videos and news. Do you mix them somehow together? And if so, how do you evaluate like different media types? Do you focus on some metrics more than others for different kinds of media?
Actually, it's a very good question, and something that we're working right now in like mixing the content. Like we have feeds for news, but we're trying to mix the video and news in the same feed. So at the time, we are just like trying to normalize the content, but in the future, we are trying to mix the embeddings, extracting, for example, the subtitles of the videos to have a kind of text from that. But it's something that we are working right now. But we are kind of trying to normalize the content to have like text at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we've reached our break. After the break, we will reconvene and discuss the topics that were presented in this session. We'll try and do breakout groups on Zoom for those online, and we'll figure something out here as well so we can have groups. So see you again in half an hour-ish.
Hello, welcome back after the break. We have part of the technology up and running, part of it, but we'll manage. I hope you did do the voting for the best paper art. I will do the analysis right away, and we'll announce it at the end of the session, who will be the winner or who is the winner. But there's still plenty of time towards that. So what do we do now? So we had a very nice keynote. We had pitches on different topics with lots of different questions. And now it's the time to get involved and discuss further. So we make breakout rooms. They're now called breakout rooms because the online people will do breakout rooms in the software. And we will also do like within the room breakout rooms on site. So the idea is like online, it will happen automatically that people are assigned to breakout rooms. We will divide it like manually, who's working with who. The idea is that first of all, in the group, within the group, you introduce yourself in case you don't know each other really well for ages already. Then choose a topic for the group so that really fits the group. You can take something from the keynote and from the pitches that we had before, and discuss your views on that and move forward with that. The task is to note the most important points in our living document on Google Docs. You have the URL here. And which is also a very important task, you have to decide on a spokesperson for the group you manage, I'm pretty sure. And after wrapping up, or for wrapping up, you have to summarize the findings of your group in 3 sentences. And we take it like 3 exclamation mark sentences. So really try to be concise on where you came up to, so we can then easily wrap it up at the end of the session. How much confusion is in the room? Not yet, but it will come for sure. I always tell my students, yeah, there will always be confusion. There's a question in the chat. Now that I'm computer, I can actually look at it. How much time do we have? So we have overall an hour. Now it's less, 50 minutes because I'm already giving the introduction for the group work, and then we do the wrap up for that. And I'm not having the stopwatch for that, so maybe it's a couple of minutes longer. So concerning the breakout rooms online, Eva is in charge of that. She's our Zoom chief person at the moment. If something goes wrong, we'll connect via other channels. If you're not, for the online people, if you're not assigned to any breakout room soon, then ask in the chat what's going on and we try to get that solved. And for on-site, I make like Ellen, do you want to make a division how it's special wishes? Yeah. So having topic 2 in the front, topic 1 in the back. What did you say? Half and half. Okay, topic 1 in the, like, depends what the front is. Okay.
Maybe.
If I can't get snap, I'm gonna take these two.
Hi, for the online people, so on-site people, don't be disturbed. For the online people, please follow the link that Eva just posted on Zoom for our workaround instead of the breakout room. So we have our personal link, so we can move on with that. Thanks.
Just as an FYI, we have 10 more minutes of discussion, so And time's up. All right, everyone. We've had a bit of a discussion. Hello, topic 2, please come up. So we've had a bit of a discussion, and now we're going to do a brief summarization of what we've been talking about. So we're going to try and have our online participants summarize their discussions. So have the 2 breakout rooms found spokespeople? Anyone?
That's me.
Hi, Masood.
Hi.
So what are your 3 sentences?
So quickly summarizing, we focused on scenarios that are not quite common in recommender systems. And one of them was when we are using recommender system as when they are assisting to the experts while they are searching. As an example, a talent search where recruiter search for relevant candidates. So usually this is a multiple query session, right? So when you are using a recommendation algorithm and recommending a single list of candidates, how do you measure the quality of these recommendations? Because it is unlike the common evaluation scenario. So if you are measuring whether it saves the time of the recruiter to find relevant candidates, or they use less cognitive effort to reformulate queries. So how do we put this into the evaluation metrics offline was one of the points that we discussed. And the second part was, again, in a course of a session, whether the recommendations are satisfying the intent of the user at the moment, because this may change. And also the last point was, is engagement is a sign of interest or frustrations? And again, if we focus on, for example, the recruitment domain, right? When the recruiter is assessing the results or recommendations, if they spend more time, does this mean they like it or they are lost, right, among this? So, and also another domain that we focused was Google Maps as a specific domain, right? So when you kind of try to pick different recommendation algorithms, what aspects should you focus on? That was the summary of the discussion, basically.
Okay, thank you, Masoud. Spokesperson for the topic 2 online. Who would that be?
Well, that's me.
Hey, Fernando.
Well, our topic of the room was in topic 2, and specifically how eliciting emotions from users on recommender systems, or the use of emotions, and specifically the 6 basic emotions: happiness, sadness, surprise, fear, anger, and disgust on recommender systems. And the first thing we asked ourselves was, for what purpose are emotions going to be used in recommendations? Another topic is, how can we extract the emotions of users on recommender systems? And we provide several examples with different applications that are used nowadays, like Netflix or TikTok. For example, if I'm sad, do I want to watch Titanic because it's a sad movie or not? And how also recommender systems may drive certain emotions on users. So the next 2 sentences were, okay, we may extract emotions to contextualize recommendations, similar how context-aware recommenders work, in which we provide the recommender the emotion of the user at that particular time instance, and then it will learn to recommend something appropriately to the user. The other way that we can use emotions in recommender systems is to guide users to feel a particular emotion. And this is what normally happens or tends to happen with TikTok, for example, in which if you see videos of dogs and cats, then you will receive more dogs and cats. And if that makes you, let's say, happy, then you are more happy because you are seeing lots of videos of cats and dogs. It can happen on the other aspect or the other end, where you end up seeing a lot of sad videos. And the last topic that we discussed was, okay, or one of the challenges is, how can we learn if a user wants to feel something, a specific emotion when using a recommender systems, or if the user wants to follow an emotion that it's already feeling. Can we learn this from the interactions and the browsing patterns of users? And this is where the topic ended, or the discussion ended.
Okay, thank you. So on-site groups, topic 1, Lennart.
All right, we talked a lot about evaluation with regard to publications, and I will try to summarize our work in 3 sentences. First, we should avoid trying to beat SOTA, but try to beat basic baselines. Second, we should provide guidelines on scientific integrity, testing, and evaluation, and probably how we report these in papers for reviewers and people that are trying to write papers. And third, we should define something like additional metadata information for data sets on how and where we should use them for evaluation. That's about it.
So topic 2.
So we first spent about half an hour grilling Joel about like how Global did things, which was very interesting. And eventually we were able to distinguish like 3 topics that we found very interesting and relevant for the RecSys community. At first, we looked at like what from a company business model perspective, we were finding it difficult to align CTR and long-term engagement, like a number of visits. And so we would hope that in the future, we could build better models to align these short-term results with the long-term results, and maybe to look at something in the short term that's better than CTR, which does align with our long-term engagement plans. And then from a fairness perspective or from a human values perspective, we found that currently a lot of companies are not making active choices to do something about the values that they actually, or that their employees do care about. And by this, they implicitly force the user to act according to these values. If you don't promote fairness or diversity on your platform, then you rely on your user to browse diverse content, but you're not actually helping them. And then finally, we hope that also legislations and regulations can help force companies to do this second point, to actually force them to act on these values that they claim they have, but might not do something about.
All right, thank you. This was food for thought. We'll be coming back after lunch for more discussions. So please continue thinking of what it is that we're going to discuss afterwards. And now I'm going to hand over to Christina as soon as I can get this window away there. Right, Christina. No, it's mine. So you can. Oh wait, not share. What is it I want to do? It's told Eva. Okay, so then stop share. And Eva can share.
Yeah, Eva will share the screen in a moment with the presentations again. Yes. So there were lots of discussions, but we also had good papers, good abstracts, and you did your duty in not only like some people are writing the papers, but you did your duty in voting for the best paper award. So ta-da, the winner is, next slide. Are you forgetting something? Correctly evaluate a recommender system with an optimal training window. Robin Wachters, Michelle Simbatrakos. Congratulations. If you want to say thank you words, then you're welcome. We don't have like, yeah.
Thank you. That's a very big honor. I just hope that now everyone starts optimizing their training data when they're doing evaluation, because it's really important. And we see that for practitioners, it's common practice, but also do it in academia, please. Thank you.
So thanks a lot, and like congratulations again, and you will get a nice certificate from us, but we still have to prepare it. Yeah, then Eva, please to the next slide. You should have received announcement already, but still want to point you that we are, so Ellen, Eva and me, we are also having a special issue in transactions on recommender systems, especially on this topic on evaluation. The abstract deadline is pretty soon, namely on the 30th of September. So if you haven't worked on that yet, you should get started. Maybe you're inspired by the discussions. For the abstract, you have to send it directly to us, also with an just a rough explanation what you're planning to submit as a full paper, but also with an explanation why I think it's good fit to the very topic. The full paper submissions are due in the end of November. I've no idea why now my link and my QR code is not showing up, because I just entered that before, but we'll make sure that you will get it. Yeah, so on the next slide, I can only refer to the afternoon. So I think we always all deserve a break now. So on site, we go to the lunch break and we will resume at 2 p.m. Pay attention that we are in a different room Then it's called the SEDA room. It's the one behind the elevators. And there will be people around and lots of SVs that should be able to help you in finding the correct room, but pay attention that you don't end up in the wrong workshop. Oh my God. And at the same time, we have to say goodbye. I have to say goodbye to people that join us remotely. For some people, it's already quite late, or for some, it's probably in the middle of the night. So it was really good to have you here and to have the opportunity to make it a hybrid experience. Also, we had quite a lot of hiccups. So we also had to do a lot in the background, but I'm really glad that we could make it happen at least. So I'm looking forward to meet the on-site people in the other room than in the afternoon session. And I hope we can still connect and discuss in general with the whole community. Thanks a lot and see you then.